Hello everyone, it's Silvia from Tarot. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about systems of divinations that are actually fundamentally different from tarot. And also, as a consequence, they're also different from oracle decks. I believe that oracle decks are a bit of a mix. You can have divination inspired oracle decks, or most of the time it's healing oracle decks, meditation, for example, and so on and so forth. But what's really interesting to me is having a look at what's been, until probably recently, a peripheral sort of divination methods. And it's now, I think it's coming back more and more strongly. And the reason behind that is when I was touring in Southeast Asia, I had the opportunity to talk to people that were going to speak to the Congress, the Tarot Congress or Conference in Singapore, which is actually taking place, soon in September in Singapore. And I was talking to some of them, and one of them was a Thai lady from Chiang Mai, and she was saying she was going to speak at the conference, and she was actually talking about it. She was saying that systems of divination that are not strictly in the area of tarot, tarot decks, are actually coming back. And she was talking about Lenormand, she was talking about Keeper, she was talking about even using playing cards to just, as a sort of a divination system. But she was also talking about osteomancy. She was talking about, osteomancy is bone throwing. She was talking about charm casting, for example, and numerology and other sorts of really, really interesting and also very, very old systems of divination. Let's not forget that divination per se, when it's not linked to cards, for example, has been something that accompanied the evolution and the history of man since the beginning. And that results from the fear of the unknown. Whenever we're presented with something that we don't necessarily know the outcome of, we just want to do our best to do something and enlighten us and know what's going to happen. And therefore divination, like reading the entrails of an animal, for example, or reading the stars and all sorts of things, also reading the soil, the formation of the soil, have been very popular in the past, and perhaps some of them has ceased to exist or ceased to be practiced. But I think that sooner or later we'll have cycles in which we'll actually go back to the roots of divination and actually try again our hand on these kind of methodologies that so far perhaps have escaped us. But today we're not going to focus on, geomancy or osteomancy, even though I'm actually a fan of osteomancy. My own theory is to use, a bone throwing or bone casting. And so I was fascinated looking at her doing that when I was little. It was just something really, really fascinating. And slowly building also my collection of ethically sourced bones in such a way that I want to, pick up where she left off, even though I don't have the experience that she used to have. But today we're going to focus on decks. So as I said before, Lenormand, Keeper, playing cards, and the Book of Destiny, and other cards for divination. So let's have a look. First of all, I want to talk about these two absolutely gorgeous decks, Gabika's Vintage Lenormand and Gabika's Golden Lenormand Deluxe Edition. For the Deluxe Edition of the Golden Lenormand, this is the first edition, first printing from last year. And for the Vintage Lenormand, we've got the first edition, first printing. Now, Gabika is actually a dear friend in the tarot community, and she made these decks and other decks as well. She's an Aussie, she's Australian, she lives in Australia, although she has European origins, like myself. And she's basically, I reached out to her, and we actually had a conversation about Lenormand, because she's really passionate about Lenormand, and she sent me these 2 decks in exchange of a reading that I did for her. And that's something that I really love, because you know, it's a recognizing of the energy and the vibe and the passion of the work of one person in exchange for the energy and the vibe and the passion of the work of another person. And it's something that I believe in. It's something that I believe actually bonds. You know, the tarot community is bonded by these kind of exchanges, whether it's trading a tarot deck for another, or whether it's trading a reading for a tarot deck or an oracle deck or a Lenormand deck. I think it's not just fun per se, but it's actually really, really good for creating this type of bonding in the community. Now, let's talk about these 2 decks. I reached out to her to make sure that I wasn't saying anything incorrect. So this deck, for the time being, they will be available soon, hopefully by the end of the year, and she will have a possibility for global shipping out of her Etsy shop and also her website. I will make sure to link the website in the description box below. What can I say? Let's have a look at one of them first and then the other. I'm just gonna have a look at the Golden Lenormand Deluxe first. First of all, I want to say that this cardstock is absolutely phenomenal. This is a really good linen cardstock. It's linen back and forth, but it's not like the Cursed Auguries, which has the same kind of structure, so linen back and forth, but also it clearly feels like it has a core. Now, I'm not a cardstock expert, but this one feels a lot sturdier than the Cursed Auguries. I don't dislike the Cursed Auguries, but I do prefer this kind of linen. And I know that there's a few alternative cards. There you go. For example, you can always choose the rider, but let's just have a look. So this one is the Golden Lenormand Deluxe, and obviously you can see where it takes its name. It's got this golden kind of wooden frame and a golden background to the images. It's a really beautiful collage. I really appreciate it. I really like it. It's something that it's probably, let's say, if you are a complete beginner on Lenormand, because the association is just referring to the number and the card, let's say, on the top of the card. So on the playing card, let's say, at the top. It's not necessarily a deck you would use if you're an absolute beginner on Lenormand. Even though the images, I mean, a dog is a dog is a dog, isn't it? And it's you still need to know the names of the cards, I guess. I mean, it's not necessarily straightforward. This is also on Gabika's own suggestion that it's perhaps for a kind of a more medium to advanced kind of level of expertise on Lenormand. I keep on saying Lenormand because that's the English way of pronouncing it, but it's actually Lenormand because it's a French system. It has been created in France. So this is the, I really love this. I would probably definitely go for the shark options on this one, because I really like it. I like when the images actually go outside of the frame. There are a few decks that do that, and I always appreciate that. So this is the Golden Lenormand Deluxe, but my favorite, and that's the reason why I wanted to keep it for as the second deck, is the Gabika's Vintage Lenormand. Now this one is absolutely gorgeous. It's got the same cardstock. Although I think that perhaps because of a different imprinting, this one actually feels even more silky and less, you know, that kind of tactile feel that you get when you touch a linen cardstock or a linen finish. This one has got that same kind of tactile feel to it, but it's also a bit more papery, which I really appreciate. I don't know whether it's the same or slightly different. It might be completely the same, and I might be attributing a different kind of tactile feel to it out of the blue. But in any case, this one is more for beginners. I definitely recommend this one for beginners. It's again, there's a lot of alternative cards you can choose from, but this one for me, it's got a really dark kind of vibe, and I mean that in a positive way, because I actually really like, and if you've seen my Halloween decks video, you will know that I really like and enjoy darker decks. And the reason why I say that it's got a darkish vibe to it, it's because of the contrast between all of the images that all of the images look like some kind of a stamp printing, you know, in red. You know those old stamps that you use to print denied or accepted on papers, for example, and they had this kind of the ink was red, and it had this kind of it looked like that, and some others as well, some other colors as well, for example black, and we've seen the blue one, and I really like that kind of effect. I also really like the fact that there's this kind of antiquing on the cards. I absolutely love this side card, Whip and Bats. So I really like this deck, the atmosphere that it creates. It's conducive of a very darkish kind of vibe. Of course, the theme is vintage, so that's also something in play. But I really enjoy using it. I have to admit, I received these decks probably last week, but I was on jury duty last week, so I didn't really have time to play with them, to get to know them, but I did that this morning. I love this lily. And it works like a charm. It's so very, the images are so very evocative. I mean, look at this key card, for example. It really gives you the idea of unlocking something, and unlocking knowledge as well, because obviously, you know, we do look at this triangle as it could be the Masonic symbol, you know, it could be a number of things, but it does give you that kind of impression. So these two decks, as I said, the Golden Lenormand and Deluxe, and the Vintage Lenormand by Gabika, will be available hopefully by the end of the year, so I'll make sure to put the link in the description box below. But the next one I want to talk about is a deck that you've probably seen already in my channel. It's the Maléfique Lenormand. Now this is the same author as the Tarot Nuage. I'm not going to try and pronounce it because I wouldn't know how to. Sorry about that, but you can clearly see that. Well, this is a mass market. Yeah, it's a US Games publication, so it's mass market. It's relatively easy to find, and I just really like this deck because well, the cardstock is not my favorite, being this shiny and, you know, and glossy and catching the light, but I really like the way in which the images have kind of given their own spin to the concept expressed by the cards. There's a lot of you know, gargoyle kind of reminiscent art style here, and I really appreciate it. And this one is also, to me, evocative of a very kind of dark energy. The color palette is very saturated, you know, at times, but there's not a lot of colors on the same card, let's say. There's a lot of use of the contrast between the black and the white, and what I really like as well is the use of the blank spaces, or the absence of images in some of the card, which make the subject stand out even better. There's probably only one or two cards in which there's that the blank spaces are not actually actively used as a functionality, as a tool, and it's really nice. I really like it. Very dark, as well, as the name suggests, Maléfique. So the Maléfique Lenormand. And another Lenormand that I have, this is also a recent acquisition, is the Shadowland Lenormand by Monica Budisky, and she's the same creator as the Shadowland Tarot. Now again, as you know, as for the other decks, this one is also recent acquisition, so I didn't necessarily have time to go through it. This is the, okay, there's a couple of cards that you can use as stoppers. So this is the booklet. I like it that it actually talks a little bit about Lenormand. So the name is Marianne Lenormand, and we're talking about, she was born in Alençon in Normandy in 1772. She went to an orphanage at the age of 5. She was highly intuitive. As a teenager, she moved to Paris and became a well-known cartomancer, seer, and prolific author. Now, I really love to read a little bit of a background of the decks, because we're not necessarily all familiar with the system of Lenormand. Now, just to spend a couple of words on Lenormand, it's a set, let's say, number of cards. It's 36 cards, cards. And they're all, let's say, carrying a name. So you've got the cross, you've got the garden, you got the star, you got the birds, etc. Now, having said that, what happened, I think, until perhaps a couple of years ago, because there was this, it wasn't an oracle deck, it could not be seen as an oracle deck. People did not necessarily take it as a way to be creative. And so you'll see a lot of older publication in Lenormand that are not necessarily, you know, they don't have a lot of creativity on display on the cards, because, you know, as we always say, a tree is a tree is a tree. However, I do believe that recently, perhaps in the last couple of years, with artists such, for example, Anatolian, she's made a really beautiful Lenormand, which is called Clé de la Lune. And by the way, I was reading in her page on Facebook that will be the last print of the Clé de la Lune Lenormand. She's actually saying that she's very upset because she's seen it reproduced and sold on Temu for like $5, and that's a bit of a plague of this kind of era, isn't it? Because unfortunately we see so many decks being pirated and reproduced as fakes and sold as at really stupid prices, you know, everywhere. And unfortunately people fall for it and they buy it, and yeah, I mean, when it's a mistake, it's a mistake, of course. It actually happened to me once, and I really had no idea, because it looked like a perfectly normal deck. It had gilding and everything, and the booklet and everything, but there was a slight difference. So the two-part box did not come with a thumb cutout, and that's how I recognized that it was not actually, because I reached out to the creator. It's a tarot deck, so I reached out to the creator and asked, did you ever make any version in which there's no cutout for the thumb? And she's like, no, that's a very well-known fake. And I'm like, wow. I mean, it was 1000% the same as the original, and it wasn't cheap either. So anyway, it happens to everyone. So what I wanted to say is that Anatolian said that's the last time in which she's going to print that Lenormand of hers. So if you want to grab a copy, I would definitely do it now, because it went on pre-sale on the 1st of September. On pre-order, sorry. So this one is the Shadowland though. So let's have a look at this one. I believe that it still conveys those quirky, dark but quirky vibes of the Shadowland Tarot. If you're not familiar with the Shadowland Tarot, I highly recommend it, because for Halloween, it's the kind of deck that really gives you the possibility to focus on both the aspects of Halloween. So the darkness on the one hand, and, you know, the playfulness on the other hand. And the figures and let's say the theme is very similar to the tarot deck. So if you enjoy, on the other hand, if you enjoy the tarot deck, I highly recommend the Lenormand, because it's I love this key card. because it's really playful but dark at the same time. Ironically, generally speaking, you will see that Lenormand decks have a smaller kind of size. Most of the time it will be poker size, poker as in the poker card kind of size. However, this one has a standard tarot size, which is not very usual, I might say, for a Lenormand. But let's have a look at different divination systems. So what I've got here is a Keeper, or Kippa as we say that in Australia, Keeper deck by Alexander Mazurek. I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly, so I'm just going to point at the name. Funnily enough, this one actually says Oracle cards. I don't necessarily know of any Lenormand deck that actually says Oracle cards at the bottom. There might be plenty. My experience with it is Lenormand just recognizes itself as a system that is other than Oracle. Keeper in this case, I don't know whether it's this particular edition, but it does say Oracle cards. Now, to me, it's not. This is not an Oracle. This is published by Red Feather. It's a very nice box, by the way. Lenormand and Keeper, generally speaking, have the same size, so you know, poker size. This production is very nice for value because it's actually about $20 Australian, and it's got a nice dull gold edging or gilding. I like the backs. Hello. Okay, well, this is odd. What's this card doing? Okay, that was in the middle. So obviously there's also a Lenormand by the same author, probably also published by Red Feather, I'm assuming. So the difference is, it's very difficult to establish a difference of reading, the methodology of reading a Keeper, you know, as opposed to a Lenormand. What I can tell you is that the difference is not in how you set up the reading, but in how you read the cards. So the Lenormand is actually made in such a way that each and every card link to the one before that and the one after that, and they link in such a way that you need to compose a sentence. You're literally reading all of the cards one after the other as if it were a sentence. But in order to do so, you obviously have to make changes in the interpretation of the cards. So just off the top of my head, you also have to read directionality. So if there's a ring, for example, and let's say the scythe is for breaking up. So the ring represents a bond that will be broken up. So you read the two cards together as in divorce, or, you know, break up, or the rescinding of a contract. In any case, it's to be read you know, as a sentence. Whereas, for example, if you have the opposite, if you have a scythe first and a ring later, that might actually mean the conclusion of a contract, the signing off of a contract. So it depends a lot on directionality, it depends a lot on the position of the card in the tableau, it depends a lot on the other cards around it, blah, blah, blah. But what I mean to say with this is that whereas you have a ring and a scythe, and you don't say ring, a marriage, scythe, and an ending, you actually have to bring the two cards, or three or four or five, together in a sentence. Keeper doesn't do that. Okay, so to me, that is literally the biggest difference. Keeper is literally, it's something that you need to read exactly as it shows. So a thievery is a thievery. So to me, that's why I prefer when someone says, you know, a tree is a tree is a tree, referring back to Lenormand, it's a yes, but. To me, that is of course applicable to Lenormand, but it is mostly applicable to the Keeper system, because expectation is an expectation. So if you have an expectation and then prison, it means you have to read it as in you're expecting to go to prison. So it's not a sentence that changes slightly the meaning of the cards because they are linked together. You just read one by one. the Lenormand, you don't do that. You don't read one by one. As a matter of fact, I think there's still people reading Lenormand as one by one. That is not the way it is meant to be read. Although I'm not an expert on Lenormand, so there's another one. Oh, that's the guy. Hi, Alexander. On a boat. So I know that there's other people probably reading Lenormand in a different way, but let's say according to tradition, Lenormand is for sentences, Kippa is for reading the cards one by one. So this is the Keeper by Alexander Masrak, and let's have a look at different decks. And I'm sure you've all seen this deck quite recently because it's been very popular. It's, again, a mass market publication, so it's very affordable. It's the Inner Eye Oracle. And so these are playing cards. It's literally a deck of playing cards, very large. So if you have eyesight problems, this one you can read it without any problems at all, which I'm very grateful for. So this deck is also very, very interesting. What happens is that there's an association, let's say a numerological association with also elemental association and the cards. So, for example, you've seen there's a quite clear image on the card. There's the number and the seed, and then there's a word which is a keyword. What I can say is that you'll probably notice that my deck is a bit damaged. You probably see these spots here and in other cards as well. I don't know whether it's because it was printed and then probably, you know, packed before the inks were completely dry. I have tried with an eraser to really gently just go over these and it doesn't come out. So in some cases, you know, some decks will have it and you just go, even with your thumb, it's just a smudge and you can remove it. This one doesn't. I actually cannot remove. I tried anything short of, you know, the solvent, the ink remover, which I'm not going to try on this type of cardstock because I'm not entirely sure that it won't ruin it. So I'm just going to keep this deck. I actually bought it from a bookstore in Thailand, so it would be almost impossible. It would be impossible to return it. I don't even know if I kept the receipt. So this is what it is, and I'm just keeping it obviously this way. I have to say, because I do have, my mind is wired in a certain way, so this is actually kind of unpleasant for me to look at. And please hold your guns in the sense that I'm not being picky. It's just, I do have a slight OCD, so this is actually distracting for me. I keep on thinking, oh, but probably if I use, you know, if I just scratch it off, I can probably clean it. And so this deck, ironically, even though I was very excited to get it, it's actually one of the decks that I keep on putting off, you know, deep diving in because of that. And again, you know, to each their own, and I know that there'll be people really not caring at all about this, but I can also tell you that if you do that, it actually is, it feels like it's almost, it's got a 3D consistency to it. It's not just flat on the card. Anyway, see, I just start doing this kind of thing every time I read. I start doing this kind of thing, which is not conducive of a good reading, as you can imagine. So what I'm going to do, I'm probably going to either rehome or gift this deck to someone else and buy a new copy. Because I really like it. I really like the concept as well. So technically, as I said at the beginning, there is a connection between, let's say, the numerological element to the cards and also the elemental energy to the cards, which makes it a very good deck for learning these kind of energies. Because it reads like an oracle card, you can do a 3-card pool and then you just read that as a sentence. Let me just have a look if I do that on camera. Of course, let's not forget that Mercury is still retrograde and it's been awful. I was on jury duty last week and nothing was working. All of the electronics were kaput. It was uncanny. And I was the only one, you know, suggesting it's, you know, Mercury retrograde, and I was met by 11 people looking at me like I was crazy. But gadgets, you know, gadgets like that, when it comes to technology and communication during Mercury retrograde, forget about it. It doesn't work. It just doesn't. Anyway, let's see what we've got here. So we've got the advisor. We got the stranger. Oh, sorry, can you see that? Yes. You can see that it's almost in most two cases. For example, we're talking about archetypes. So the archetype of the advisor, of course, because that's a king, and the archetype of the stranger. The stranger can be someone that you don't know yet. So it figures with the fact that it's a page. Sorry, a joker. And then an ace, it doesn't fit anymore, an ace, diamonds, and the 8 of diamonds, the ace of diamond referring back to the pentacles and the new financial projects that you have in mind that you're going to start. And the support related to the 8 of diamonds, related to the fact that you still have something to go. You know, you've done enough, but you've done a lot but not enough. So you're still working really hard. It looks as if this person doesn't know themselves yet. They have been seeking for advice on some kind of a project, but they admitted to themselves, after working really hard on it, they have to admit to themselves that they still need some kind of a aid or support. Perhaps even a funding, you know, because it's related to money. Now, let me tell you something that's very, very clear in all of these different methods of divination other than tarot. Whereas tarot can really point out to as above kind of energies, and also circular energies in the so below. These decks don't have majors, so you'll see that unless it's something very, very special, they always refer to something very concrete, very specific, very so below, very secular, very daily. So it's always perhaps related to a money question, you know, financial question, or studying, or a relationship, or stuff like that. And this is also, I should have said that at the beginning, but this is also what you need to envision yourself using these texts for whenever someone is coming to you asking to be read with these texts. It needs to be a very specific question and not about, you know, energies or vibes or philosophical related questions. It needs to be something very concrete. Now, the same I can say when it comes to this deck. This is the answer deck. This is my disheveled copy by Running Press that I bought a gazillion years ago. I received since then a gift from a wonderful person. Thank you so much, Sarah. And she heard on my channel that I was looking for another copy of this deck because this one is practically ruined, as you can tell. It's being shuffled so much that now it's really fraying at the edges. Yeah, so I'm really worried about ruining it. And so she found, because I couldn't find it in Australia unless I was paying like $430 or something. So she found it, and you know, she sent it to me to the warehouse in Portland, and then I got it shipped over. And I'm very, very happy to have 2 copies of this, because this also has a lot of sentimental value. This deck is so spot on every single reading that I used to use it with a really close friend of mine who passed away, unfortunately, and we used to call it the Jumanji Tarot or the Jumanji deck, because if you remember the movie Jumanji, you will know how that once you get in, you can't stop playing, you have to get to the end of it. And that's the same with this deck. Once you start reading with this deck, you can't just stop halfway. You have to go through to the end, and you have to expect that whatever the deck says, it will happen. I have since received so many comments about this deck from other tarot readers and tarot tubers that everyone reached out to me saying, oh my god, this deck is unbelievable, it is absolutely crazy. I honestly, I don't know how it does it, because it is one of those decks that you really need to use for divination. And it tells you the truth. It really does. It might be difficult to accept it, but it's really crazy. So not to be taken lightly, this deck, not at all. Seriously, it's one of those decks that you need to be in a very different space of mind in order to use it without being scarred by it. It is that kind of deck, but I adore it. So this is the answer deck. And another deck that I also adore, but for different reasons, for completely different reasons, is the Curious Cat Club. Now it says playing cards and oracle deck. What you'll notice is that this deck is a deck of playing cards, of course, as it says. There you go. However, at the beginning they give you this kind of leaflet, like an oracle guide, as in, for example, okay, you look at the suit of hearts, so the ace is a nap, recharge, stillness, the 2 is hug, comfort and intimacy, the 3 is flowers, dozy, hold close, and so on and so forth. So basically when you pull a card, so it also explains to you how to use these cards. This, by the way, is by Stasia Barrington. Does it say so here? Stasia is also the author of the Sasureibito tarot deck. And also she made an oracle deck. I think it's called the Empty Cup Oracle. So this is, if you love cats, this is the deck for you. It's absolutely the cutest thing on a planet. By the way, it's a really, really soft kind of linen cardstock. It's a mass market deck and it's very cheap. I think I bought it for 18 Australian dollars, so it's very cheap. As you can see, it does not have the keywords on the cards themselves, but you know, when you use it, then you can always refer back to the guide. It's really no big deal. And it's just absolutely adorable. It's adorable. Look, this is my cat. My cat Chicho looks exactly like this, and he's this chubby. But he's not chubby because he's fat. He's chubby because he's got a lot of fun. I love this joker. So this is just one of those decks that I just really adore. I look at it all the time. It's just so funny. It presents cats in a very sweet, kind of quirky and whimsical position, and images like this one, for example, a cat being an alien, you know, in front of the dumplings. Oh, flower cats. Or doing yoga, or drinking coffee. This is the best. It looks like they just woke up. So this is obviously an oracle deck. So the way you use it, any way you would use a normal oracle deck, you pull a card and then you just, let's see, the 5 of cloves. So coffee, where do you find your energy? Well, I have to say, for me today, it's actually a good card, because this morning I woke up and my husband and I just decided to move because of many reasons. And so we're moving, and I hate moving. I just really hate it. I think there's nothing that I hate more. Well, there's other things that I probably hate more, but as in concrete things, I hate moving. And I just received an oracle deck which I absolutely adore. It's called the Outlaw Oracle. And I pulled a card thinking to myself, I'm so exhausted, I hate moving, I'm so exhausted, I can't do this, it's so oppressive. And I pulled the heat wave, which is referring back to exhaustion and oppression. And so I thought to myself, okay, you're making it this way. You're the one that is looking at it this way. It doesn't have to be this way. Take it little by little, step by step. We got 2 months to move, and you know, I'm taking it very slowly. So where do you find the energy? I asked myself that by packing boxes today, one after the other, and carrying them around. And I was like, how can you do this? And you know, I was trying to shush that part of myself, wondering why the hell did I put myself in this situation again. But there are reasons, and it's good reasons. Okay, it's a Six of Swords kind of situation. It's a pain in the bum for now, but we're going to it will be a better place. So anyway, so this is the Curious Card Club. So the next thing I'm going to show you, it's a very old deck in my collection. It's called Le Corte d'Amore, so the Love's Courts, and it's from Modiano, is it? Yes. So Modiano is a very well-established printing company in Italy. They print mostly, let's say, tarot and oracle decks, but also playing cards. I honestly don't even know if they're still printing, to be honest, because it is such an old deck. And I haven't seen any Modiano deck for quite some times. I know there were a few in the 80s. I don't necessarily remember seeing any new Modiano publication, but then again, I don't live in Italy. So perhaps they still are in business. So it gives you this kind of leaflet in which it explains to, obviously it's in Italian. It explains to you everything, the main meanings related to colors. For example, black is about the so below, you would say, or practical life or daily life, and red is about sentimental related matters. Then you've got the goods, good meaning and bad meaning, bad and good. For example, it says all of these ones, so it could be related to the clothes could be related to fire, as in flowers and wands. It could be related to the success of material enterprises, or related to money, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to translate all of it because apparently my brain doesn't work today. Sometimes it's very difficult for me to skip from to translate from one language to the other, because it depends on what language I'm using to think today, and today it's English. And as I said before, Mercury retrograde is also affecting communications, so this can actually be used by a person not necessarily speaking Italian, although it's actually better, and I will show you why. So it does have the translation in German and in English and the French. Let me just check. Yes, so German, English, and French. And problem is that it does have some keywords at the bottom, and it doesn't look like it's translating the keywords. You see, so it's probably best if you speak a little bit of Italian. These are, let's say, the querent. So the older kind of querent, the younger kind of querent, female and male. And then you've got the cards, and it's a like a poker deck again, because you do have the image at the top left like that. Now this is very interesting because it does show you two different meanings depending on whether you read, you know, the card upright or reversed. So for example, the Six of Hearts in its upright position means money or the past, but when it comes to your reversed, is the future or renovation or renewal rather than renovation. So this is a very interesting deck in the sense that, to be honest with you, it is very specifically related to the sentimental matters. It is called the Love Courts, but on the other hand, it is very, very specific on any kind of question, and it feels like it does belong in this category, as in, you know, Lenormand, Keeper, or Sibylla even. I don't have a Sibylla. I used to, but I can't find it anymore, so probably it's in Italy, in some storage. But it's still one of those decks that it's it looks at the nitty-gritty stuff. It definitely does not dilly-dally in this as above. As you can tell, surprise or winnings, or you know, expectation or caution. So it's a very interesting deck to use. Of course, you can use it like any other deck. You can use it on a 3-card pool or more than 3 cards, etc. This is interesting because, contrary to the others, you can actually shuffle it in such a way that you can read reversals if you read reversals, and in some cases I don't read reversals in tarot when I'm actually using spreads, because I believe that in a spread, the position in the spread will tell me, and also the surrounding cards will tell me whether I have to read the upright meaning of the card or the reversed meaning of the card. However, when it's decks like this, I will definitely read reversals as well. So this is the Love Quartz. And another deck that I wanted to show you today is the Between the Worlds, also by Monica Budirsky. So we've seen earlier the Shadowland Lenormand by Monica, and now we're also looking at the Between the Worlds. This is super interesting for me because it looks like it's a combination between charm casting and bone throwing. So Monica says shadow casting with bone and curio oracle cards. So basically what she's done, I'm just going to show you. The book is really interesting, by the way. Really interesting. So for example, number 26 is the bear claw, health and illness. Obviously depending on upright and reversed. Digging roots, why are you still down there poking around in the dirt? I'm up here trying to get those berries and could use a little help. So you'll see that basically there is a little bit of a story that introduces the card. There's protagonists of a story talking to each other, and they give a bit of a background on the card itself. The item tells you Monica's personal story about it. So she's saying, I purchased several bear claws from the Gathering of Nations powwow in Albuquerque while working at the Native Canadian Centre of Toronto. Bears dig for roots and understand the medicines of the earth. They are powerful and fiercely protect their young. My mother used to speak about the significance of bears in our family and how they needed to eat bear meat as a child to survive in the isolated rural regions of Northern Europe. Obviously, I love the fact that there's this personal reference to something that has actually happened in the life of someone. So let me tell you something about the process and the method for memorizing something in order to achieve that translation from the temporal lobe into the hippocampus, where the memory will be stored for long term. So you will actually recall them when you need them. If you attach to them a story, it makes it a lot easier. So I will always remember this now, because I remember the fact that someone was actually eating bear meat to survive because it was so cold. And so whenever I will see this card coming up, I will remember that resilience story. So this is one of my favorite things to do. It's literally just looking at the cards, looking at the book, reading the stories, and I'm so very appreciative that Monica has done all this work on the guidebook. Let me just zoom in. And you've got all sorts of, other cards. So you got the Ravenclaw, the Acorn, the Hackstone, Vertebra, Fulgurite. I think I've also been reading reversals with this because some of them are reversed. So that's kind of a given. But I really enjoy this deck. I also really like the cardstock. It's got that kind of papery, tactile feel to it, but it's a silky kind of papery in the sense that it still fans out really well, although I don't necessarily do it well now because I'm on wood and it's been lacquered, so it's very slippery. But if I had my reading mat, it would be fanning out really well. It is a poker size deck. The images are completely different, you will notice, from Monica's usual signature work. So if you remember the Shadowland Tarot and the Shadowland Lenormand that we've seen earlier, this has got nothing to do with that. There is always a bit of a quirkiness to some of the cards. I just saw one I wanted to show you. Okay, I lost it. For example, this devil head as well. But it's not, it is somehow a bit of a more serious kind of deck. It is taken in a serious kind of way. And it does, looking at these bones and the significant, the meaning of the bones, from the book, I would definitely affirm that this is how you would read, bone casting, bone throwing. So basically, for example, a longer bone refers to a timing, so it's a long period of time. A shorter one is a shorter period of time. There's the Atlas bone, the doll's arm, bear claw, we just seen it, button, the quartz point, long bone, as I said, period of time. So it's a very, very interesting deck that it does indeed mix up a bit of the meanings of osteomancy and charm casting and curio, you know, all of these curiosities kind of things put together. It reads really well. I'm actually really liking this deck so far. I, again, haven't had that much time to use it, but I did read with this a couple of times, and it gives really excellent readings. Now let's have a look at the next tarot. I'm so used to say the word tarot deck. So the next deck is the Book of Destiny, or rather Le Livre du Destin. And this is unfortunately out of print. I had no idea because I didn't pay that much for it. I bought it many years ago by Grimaud in France, and now it's about $200-300, unfortunately. I've used it only a few times because, to be honest, it's not the simplest one. It's not the easiest deck to use in specific, because it's got a very special kind of picking of the cards. So it's just laying down all of the cards, but every 3 cards you have to put one aside, and every 7 card, the 7th one you have to remove. So it's basically there's a lot of shuffling or dealing of the cards, that, you know, at the end you remain you're left with a few cards, and you just read them in the same way you would read, for example, a keeper. So it's very literal as well. The business letter is a letter about business, or a fair-haired girl, etc. There will be trouble, etc. So it's a beautiful deck, and you know, I'm sorry that it's out of print. I don't know whether it's because there wasn't enough demand for it, I'm guessing, and then, you know, they just did not keep on producing it. But it's a very interesting kind of divination system. It's got the booklet both in French and in English, so you can definitely have a look at it. There's a number of different ways to draw. As you can see, there's also a different way to lay the cards down in a spread. And then it's got the meaning of the cards. So in some cases, you kind of have a similar way of reading them to what you would see, in, for example, in an RWS, but in some other cases it's completely different. Although, you know, the 10 of Hearts, 10 of Cups could be seen not necessarily as a marriage, but as a community, but also happiness at home, it makes sense. You know, success, for example, for the 9 of Hearts, and so on and so forth. Some of them are very similar in meaning, some of them are completely different, but it's really interesting anyway. So sorry about that, it's out of print. But this was the last one. So I do have several other decks that are not necessarily you know, pertaining to either one or another category. But what I meant to say with this video is that Lenormand is definitely coming back. I feel that there's a lot of artists that, seeing the success of tarot and oracle decks, they have started looking into other system of divination and producing them and, you know, creating them in order to be able to gather some interest from the divination community, from the occult community and the tarot community. And I feel that we live in very interesting times, because that will mean perhaps that there will be, as I said before, there will be other divination methods that will be explored again. And perhaps we'll find ourselves studying new ways to try and understand what happens, what's happening, and try and understand and have an idea on the future. So yeah, definitely interesting times. But thank you so much for staying with me till the end of this video. As always, I really love it when you comment on my videos, when you reach out to me with questions. I'm always happy to answer. I will always do my best to you know, get in touch with you guys. So stay tuned, more to come.